Who is Clemson? Pretty simple question. Not a simple answer. As you know, Clemson lost to Louisville last week. 33-21 was the final score. But that score looks a whole lot closer than it really was if you watch this team play against Louisville last week. We got dominated in the trenches at times. Our offense looked stagnant, looked confused, looked like they could not get going at all. The run defense was absolutely atrocious for most of the game. It was just bad all the way around. And Clemson started the season, right? Everybody can go back to the Georgia game where, we played Georgia tough for a half, and then, the floodgates opened in that second half, ended up losing 34-3, 31-point loss there. And then we just rattle off a whole bunch of wins, right? And everybody was talking about, wow, this Clemson offense looks a lot better. The growth is evident. Cade Klubnik looks like a different quarterback. The wide receivers are getting separations. The explosive plays have returned to Clemson. And then Saturday happened. And it looked like we had gone back in our shell. It looked like we had regressed to the offense that trotted out there week one against Georgia. It looked like we had regressed and trotted the same offense out there that was the 2023 Clemson Tigers. So my question to you, Jordan, is who is this Clemson team? What are we going forward this season? So I'm going to pose to you a multi-layered question, okay? So first, I want you to outline what should Clemson's fans' expectations be for the rest of this season and this current state of Clemson, this current team that we have in 2024, after seeing what happened to them against Louisville, after seeing what happened to them against Georgia, somehow marrying that up with the domination in between those two games. What should Clemson's fans expect going forward for this season? And then once you answer that, we'll go a little bit more broad.
Yeah, it is a tough answer, really, because this season has been so weird in terms of the vast dichotomy between performances. You have the first week against Georgia where you couldn't get anything going on offense, and then the second half you got bludgeoned defensively. And then you go on that 6-game winning streak, and you're putting up a bunch of points and a bunch of yards, hitting explosive plays. Cade Klubnik is playing the best football of his career, but you're playing bad to mediocre defenses, and you were doing what you were supposed to do. And that was one thing that we emphasized. You have to give credit when teams take care of business.
Yep.
And this team largely did. And of course, even during that winning streak, we talked about the lapses that this team was having defensively that we saw reared their ugly head on Saturday. And so it's really hard to, and then you have Saturday where you regress back to the things that we have seen from this Clemson team in previous years, plus a really poor defensive effort. And so now it's really hard to marry the two and figure out kind of where this team's actual baseline is. Is this team more closer to the team that we've seen against Louisville and Georgia? Probably, honestly. When you've played two teams that have similar athletes to you, or was last weekend in particular, was it just a blip, and that's not representative of what this team is against non-top 5 teams? And so I think for Clemson fans, I think the expectation, just based on what we've seen, until this team proves that they can match that level that they played at during the 6-game winning streak against better teams, I don't think the expectation is that you win out. And that hurts me to say. Because I think on paper, from a roster talent standpoint, you have better players than the rest of the teams on your schedule. but we just have not seen this team play up to its potential. So now you're just, for me, I tend to think that they'll play better this weekend, and we'll get into it. But I can't I can't marry myself to the hope that this team just wins out the rest of their games and they go through unscathed. Like at Pitt, you still have to go. You still have to do next week. And then of course, I mean, you play the Citadel. I definitely expect that to be a win. But then you have that home game against South Carolina, which at this point looks the most daunting of any of these games because they're playing at a really, really high level defensively. And you've shown that even against teams that have some issues offensively, you can surrender points. And they're certainly starting to click on their offense as well with Lenora Sellers, a guy that can run the ball and pass. And so now I can't tell myself and I can't tell you guys that I think this team is going to make it through this stretch without another loss. So I think, to put it bluntly, 9-3. I mean, but with that honestly might be the not best case scenario, but close to the best case scenario, because I think this team has shown that they can lose this week and they can lose next week, and then they could also lose on at the end of November. And then all of a sudden you're a 6-6 football team. And wouldn't that would be one of the most epic collapses I think we've seen, or 7-5, because you would have that win over the Citadel, but you'd be a 7-5 football team. And that would be such a far cry from where we thought this team was, projected to be just last week.
Absolutely.
That was my long answer. We haven't even talked about the bigger picture, but for this team, you 9-3 honestly feels like it's like that might be pretty good, all things considered. But we'll see. We'll see. They certainly have the talent to win all the rest of their games, but we just have not seen them do it. So until they do, I can't with any confidence say that they're going to win out.
Yeah, absolutely. And you bring up a lot of good points, Jordan. And I think really for this team, you got to reset your expectations, and you have to lower your expectations. I don't think this team wins out. I don't think this team is done losing. And as painful and hard for a Clemson fan as that is to say, I just think it's the truth right now. Because I have no reason to believe that all of that growth that we saw between the Georgia game and the Louisville game, I can't believe that was all real. I have to believe that some of that, at least some of that, was due to poor competition, bad defense. I have to, because the only two teams that you played that essentially could push back against you, you got dominated by. And I know everybody wants to bring up the 450 yards, but go look at when Clemson put up those 450 yards.
That was like all in the fourth quarter. I think you were sitting at like 170 something.
Yeah,
in the third quarter.
It started with a 6-minute drive where Clemson marched down. It was like 9, 10, 11 plays, whatever, block field goal. And then they march it down again. Another 12-play drive, another 6 minutes off the clock, finally punch it in. At that point, you were playing right into Louisville's hands. They wanted you to methodically, slowly go down the field and grind clock, and that's exactly what Clemson did. Louisville was letting you do that. You didn't suddenly figure out some things on offense. I don't believe you did. I think you were just playing in the Louisville hand, and they were more than happy to step back, keep the ball in front of them, keep you in bounds, keep you chewing clock, and just using the clock against you. And that's exactly what they did. And, yeah, you chewed up a lot of yards, and you put up 2 fourth-quarter scores, but at the end of the day, they didn't mean anything. So as far as expectations for this team going forward, I think throughout the season, probably even us on this show, we allowed those expectations to grow quite a bit of where this team could be. We thought this team had the potential of heading to an ACC championship game and then ultimately the 12-team playoff. All of that stuff's out the window. We already laid it out. In order for Clemson to get to the ACC championship game right now, they would have to have either SMU or Miami lose 2 games because SMU and Miami both have wins over Louisville. So that's not happening. So you're not going to the ACC championship game. And without winning the ACC at this point with your current resume, you're not going to the 12-team playoff. So playoffs is out the window, ACC championships out the window, barring some crazy collapse by either SMU or Miami, right? So expectations going forward. And we'll get into this game, so I don't want to get too much into it, but I think Clemson will play pretty spirited this weekend. I think they will play with a lot of fire, a lot of effort. But I'm not comfortable saying this team is done losing this year. The only game that I'm 100% comfortable saying Clemson will win is the Citadel. The other 3 games, anything can happen. This Clemson team is truly showing that they are a middle to upper ACC team. And that's not good. That's not good. We thought that this team had a potential to have a spot in the playoffs, and that's not going to happen. They're not good enough, first of all. It's not even just the games that they've lost. They've proven that they don't belong in that 12-team playoff. We are not there right now. So going forward, my expectation is pretty low at this point. I'm going to be completely honest. I feel that we can lose any of the 3 remaining Power 4 conference games or Power 4 opponents that we have left on our schedule. We could go up and lose to Virginia Tech this weekend. That could absolutely happen. They can run the ball pretty well. Guess what? Our defense is not real good at stopping the run. We're allowing over 4 yards a carry on the season. It's not good. We got to stop making excuses for them. They're just not good. Pitt, you could definitely lose to Pitt, and you could certainly lose to South Carolina. They're playing a whole lot better, much better than we thought that we thought that was going to be a relatively easier game at the beginning of the season, but they've obviously developed. They've obviously gotten better throughout the season. They just got finished, beating up on Texas A&M. So I don't at this point in time, you don't feel great as a Clemson fan. But Jordan, I want to kind of flip it, and we've laid out our expectations for the rest of this season for this current team. I want to talk a little broad picture. This is a very popular topic in the sports media this week, whether it be mainstream media, YouTube, whatever the case may be. Tons of people are talking about this. They're talking about Dabo Swinney. They're talking about this Clemson program as a whole and where they are heading. Last national championship won was Clemson back in 2018, right? Trevor Lawrence. And then, it's there's been regression. There's been clear regression of the program. So, Jordan, a lot of the talk has been obviously transfer portal. A lot of the talk has been NIL. A lot of the talk has been coaching hires. A lot of the talk is, the way the program is run, so on and so forth, right? What are your thoughts on where Clemson is heading long-term as a program? What does it look like? How much regression has truly happened? And is there a path for Clemson to truly turn the corner and start climbing back up that mountain that we have clearly tumbled down?
Yep. Another great question, and another one with a lot of nuance. I don't want to I don't want to rant again. But I mean, the reality is, you asked how much regression has happened. I mean, it's been a significant when you're talking about in reference to the playoff years. I mean, this program is nowhere close to that level of play. The recruiting is not that much different, but the results on the field couldn't be any more different. Well, they could take. I mean, you could be Florida State, I guess, but you're not playing at a level that comports with the level of athlete and talent that you have on this roster. And so it's clear Clemson is no longer one of the elite programs in college football. I mean, that's been true for a few years now. But even more importantly, this team, I mean, this program doesn't even feel like they are legitimately approaching that, or that level, or taking all of the steps necessary to get there. And we credited Dabo for making the coaching hires that he did, going out and hiring Matt Luke, Chris Rump, obviously Garrett Riley 2 seasons ago.
Yeah.
But we're still not the level of play, the level of, I don't want to say the level of buy-in, because I still think most of these kids are pretty bought in.
Yeah.
Just the vibe around the program doesn't feel the same as it did from 2015, even really before that. And now we're at a point where this, your playoff dreams are essentially dashed, barring a lot of things falling your way and you taking advantage of it. But talked about how your recruiting class has been chipped away at. You had a nice addition with Jordan Young and of course Gavin Blanchard over the weekend. That was cool, but that also came with the decommitment of top 100 defensive back Grayson Littleton. We've talked about the issue, the lack of transfer portal usage, and I don't prescribe a lot of the blame to that necessarily. Although Clemson certainly could have benefited from the transfer portal over the past few years. Yeah. But NIL, I don't think Clemson is broke. It's a matter of philosophy with this program and how they choose to use their NIL. They don't. They honestly, in some instances, overemphasize roster retention and not enough in terms of talent acquisition. And so it's just all of these ancillary things that have just kind of they haven't completely cratered, but they've fallen to such a level that you are unable to get out of your players what you once were able to, at times with less talent than you have right now.
Yes.
So I don't think that as far as the long-term projection of this program, I will never think that Clemson is going to be terrible. Like I don't think the way Clemson operates, I don't think they'll ever be a 6-6, 5-7 or worse type of program. I think they're always going to be, as it stands right now, I always expect them to win, at least 8 games. I feel like it would, but and of course they have the potential to win 10 plus, but they don't. I can't project this team to ever get to that point where I feel like, okay, this is a true playoff national championship caliber team, with just the way they're operating. Something's got to change. Yeah. And I don't have all of the qualifications. It's ultimately up to Dabo whether he wants to to make those changes. And he's been willing to the past couple of off seasons. But at a certain point, it's like, okay, well, you keep retooling season after season, but the results are still not getting there. So it's like, okay, well, what do you do? And because he's made the changes in the coaching staff, but as far as how he operates the program, there's still a lot of things that he has not budged on.
Yeah.
And so, long story short, this program is, I think they are probably a top 16 to 20 program, maybe top 15. Maybe there's not a lot of programs winning regularly 8 plus games, but not anywhere better and not too much worse. Probably that 15 to 20 range is kind of where Clemson is sitting as a program, I think, right now. And that's just not what the expectation has become here. And That, and that's not the expectation Dabo has. I know he doesn't like, losing the way he did this past weekend, but these are the results you're going to get with the way things are, the way things are right now. So didn't mean to go that long. I said I was going to keep it short, and then I did a whole doom and gloom spiel, but I think that's the reality. And it's been season after season. It's like, okay, we think we're, maybe Clemson, Dabo did this. Okay, maybe this is going to be the thing that actually gets it back, trending back upward. But then you have another disappointing performance, and all that momentum is gone. And then we're asking the same questions that we were asking last season and the year before that.
Yeah. And that really gets to the core of the issue, and part of what kind of makes this such a hard pill to swallow, this game, and kind of just taking a 30,000 foot view of the Clemson Tiger program right now is you do feel like that Dabo has gone out and made some really good coaching hires. You mentioned a Garrett Riley, you mentioned a Matt Luke, a Chris Rumpf. He has let coaches go that we felt deserved to be let go. But the results aren't that much different. And yeah, the offense ran off an amazing streak this year, but we can't sit here and pretend like it wasn't bad competition. And as far as the program goes, I don't know where Clemson goes from here. Best used to be the standard around Clemson. I don't know that it is anymore. And that's hard to say. And I'm not saying that the coaching staff there and the program as a whole, I'm not saying they don't want to win. I'm sure they want to win. But clearly, whatever you're doing, however you're going about it, it's not working. So the tweaks that have been made aren't enough. Something else has to change. And to your point, Jordan, we're not qualified to give you a blueprint on, if you do this, that, and the third, Clemson football will be fixed. Here you go, Dabo. We're not qualified to do that. But we also watch a lot of college football, and we're also not stupid, and we can clearly see that there is massive regression in this program. The standards that used to be upheld in this program are no longer being upheld. And it's unfortunate. And what makes fans so mad is that Dabo set this standard. So don't be mad at the fans for holding you accountable to the standard that you told us that we should have. Remember the first time Clemson went to the ACC championship with Dabo Swinney, and all the Clemson fans were going crazy and excited, and he was like, this ain't the goal. There's where you started planting the seeds of expectations, right? And those expectations haven't changed. We went to 6 straight college football playoffs when it was a 4-team playoff.
The only program to do it 6 consecutive times.
The only program to do it 6 consecutive times to a 4-team playoff. So for at least 6 years in a row, we were a top 4 team in the country every single year. So to sit here and be like, oh, Clemson fans are so spoiled for expecting to go to the 12-team playoff. Why wouldn't we expect to go to the 12-team playoff?
The way you recruit, the conference you're in.
The conference you're in is an easier path. The competition you play is an easier path. Remember we talked about the 247 recruiting rankings or talent rankings at the beginning of the season, and Clemson was a top 5 roster in the country? They're still a top 5 roster in the country. Why aren't they performing that way? That's on the coaching staff. That's on development. And I keep talking about, you can see depth is a clear issue with Clemson, specifically this year, especially on the defensive side of the ball, right? You see every time Peter Woods leaves the game, the defense looks significantly different. They can't set the edge. They can't run defend anymore. They don't
have much of a pass rush.
They don't have much of a pass rush this year. They're giving up over, almost 5 yards a carry on the season, rushing against opponents. That's not a Clemson defense. So there's clear regression, and I think and it's depth because you have so many depth pieces leave through the portal every single year, and you're not replacing them with comparable guys. You're going to the high school ranks, and I love depending on the high school ranks. That's how you build a successful football program. But you also have to supplement. I do think Clemson's got to start supplementing through the portal to fill some of these holes. You see the glaring one that we could point real easily to, the low-hanging fruit, if you will, defensive end. It sure would be real nice to have a guy that, you're probably not going to pull the caliber of a Peter Woods, but you could have a guy that could come in there and take some significant snaps, specifically when, Peter Woods has been out for several games already this season, probably going to be out for a couple more. I don't know. We'll talk about that in a minute. But you look to this recruiting class, and I'm starting to see even the recruiting starting to slip. There's starting to be regression within the recruiting. We were always a 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 8 to 12 is where we kind of hung out in the entire Dabo Swinney era as far as recruiting. Yeah, we popped for a top 5 class once, right? Outside of that, we were 8 to 12 every single year. That's where we hung out, depending on the year, depending on how big the class was, so on and so forth. Well, this year, how many top 100 recruits have walked away from Clemson's recruiting class? We've had 5 decommits. We have a tiny class. We lost our only quarterback. There's starting to be regression, not only on the field, now it's starting to go into the recruiting process. And you mentioned NIL. Clemson's got to be more aggressive in NIL. They just do. And I know it's a small school, and I know we don't have the resources of these big universities, but we got to figure out a better way to do it.
But the thing is, and that's my problem, because you mentioned it. It's like that's the excuse that we have always given about NIL here. And the thing is Clemson is pretty well funded NIL wise.
Yep.
Like, you see what Brad Brownell is doing in the transfer portal, and he's even upped his recruiting.
Mm-hmm.
NIL has played a major factor in that.
Look at Bakich.
Eric Bakich, the baseball coach.
Yeah.
Look what he's done in recruiting and in the transfer portal.
Yeah.
NIL has certainly played a factor in both of those sports. It's become a larger part. Hell, even Mike Noonan, our soccer coach, has gone in and gotten guys, and they're a top 10 team and they've won 2 of the last 3 national championships. Like, there is nothing special about. I don't want to, like. I get football is the moneymaker, and obviously the numbers are going to be more substantial.
Yeah.
But the reality is Clemson is not, Clemson's not broke. Like,
no, certainly not.
They certainly have the cachet to go and get guys that they feel like can contribute. I don't even mean going and getting superstars, because some of them go for those really extravagant numbers. A lot of them go for those extravagant numbers that you just don't really need to pay. And like, I'm not telling them to overspend, but the reality is you're more resourced than I think people realize, and it's more a matter of the man in charge in terms of his philosophy with how we've handled our NIL situation than we just don't have the money. So that's the most frustrating thing, because it's like, okay, well, if we were hamstrung like severely by with the lack of NIL funds, like, and we just didn't have it, like, okay, well, what is he supposed to do? So, like, but the reality is you're not struggling for NIL cash. That is not a problem the way that some people think it is. So I wanted to say that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you. And I'll say one more thing, and then we'll leave it here and move on, because we've talked about this topic for long enough, and I'm sure everybody's tired of hearing us whine about Clemson football at this point. But what I will say is it's not unfair for Clemson fans to expect better. We should be a 10-plus win team every single year. We just should. And we should be vying for the ACC championship every single year. And we should have a spot in that 12-team playoff most years, right? That's a realistic expectation for this Clemson program and where it has been and where it should still be. However, we've pointed out all the reasons that we think the regression has happened. But I don't want to go – I don't want to – this program is heading towards a 7-8 win team year in and year out. And that's not what I want. And I think Clemson deserves better, and we should be better, and there's no reason we should regress to the point where, you know, we're just going to random bowls every single year. But we'll go ahead and leave that there. We've talked about it enough. All right, Jordan, moving right along, we're going to put a bow really quickly on this Louisville game. Not going to spend a ton of time here. We talked about it, I think, enough in the post-game live video. If you guys missed that, go check it out. It's on the channel. Me and Jordan do post-game live videos after each and every Clemson game. So go check out our thoughts on that. But quickly, Jordan, I know you've gone back and watched at least some of this game. I don't know if you could stomach the entire game, but you've gone back and watched at least most of this game. Any thoughts, any perspectives on, you know, what the heck happened to Clemson? Anything that stood out that we didn't talk about in that post-game live reaction?
Yeah, I mean, it really was just a system failure. I mean, it's one of those games where you just kind of burn the tape because really nothing was good. You know, offensively, you know, couldn't get separation downfield, a lot of underneath passing. I thought Cade battled, he did a great job of not turning the ball over with how many plays you ran. But, you know, he was late. He was late on a couple of balls. He wasn't perfect. But he was far from the biggest problem. Offensively, thought you didn't protect all that well, which was a little surprising. But, you know, there were moments where, you know, he had time to throw, but guys were just not getting open. I think the receivers were probably the most disappointing thing. Just not a lot of separation. And some of that, I think, is the play calls. Like you did not really do anything to make Louisville pay for manning you up on the outside and with a too high shell, like run the football. You didn't realize, okay, maybe we need to start running the football until you were already down 26-7. And so it was so frustrating. And, you know, Kay Klubnik talked about it in his post-game interview. Like they didn't really, I mean, they were playing a lot of outside leverage and they didn't really do a lot to throw the ball to the middle of the field.
Yeah. I mean, how do you beat outside leverage? Run routes inside. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's not rocket science. It's pretty frustrating watching that kind of stuff. But, you know,
it was just like when you didn't have success on that first drive running the football, it was like, okay, they just Clemson was too quick to say, okay, I guess you're not going to let us run. And then it's like, oh, and once they actually said, okay, maybe we need to go back to it, and then we started having success, it was too late. And then, so yeah, Phil Mafah thought he battled his ass off. He played a ton of snaps.
Yeah, he did.
And I mean, Kay Klubnik, I thought he battled too. Obviously, he played every offensive snap. So but beyond that, not a lot positive to say about the receiver. TJ Moore had a couple of nice catches. Obviously, Antonio Williams caught a touchdown, but you didn't really do a lot to get him going. And other than that, you just didn't have guys get separation. Of course, you had Troy Stellato over the middle, up the seam. Cade was late on that ball. That should have been a touchdown. So you had some opportunities despite some of the struggles, and you just didn't capitalize. That drive when you were up 7-3 and driving down the field, and on that third down, you have that tip ball that, for whatever reason, was it Tristan Lay or Marcus? I think it's Tristan Lay that caught it and put you behind the sticks. And it went from, I think, a 2nd and 8 or something like that to 3rd and 17 or something crazy like that. So that basically took you out of field goal range and forced you to punt the football, and then it was a disaster from there. And then obviously defensively, I think that definitely burned the tape. Just a disastrous performance.
About as bad as it could get.
Yeah, I thought secondary covered well. The pass defense was, continues to be honestly pretty good given your lack of pass rush, and the fact that you haven't been able to stop the run against really any of the competent offenses you've played. So just a ugly football game, and of course the special teams was a disaster. Couldn't punt the ball. I saw Aiden Swanson is second. Has the second fewest hang time seconds per punt in all of college, in all of the Power Four. I think it's like roughly. I had the stat up. PFF tracks it, but it is bad. It's not good.
The only surprising part of that stat is there's somebody that's worse than him at hang time. No offense.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to bag on the kid, but he just hasn't been good this year. I mean,
no.
There's nothing else to say about it.
And then, of course, I don't even need to mention the blocked field goals, which, of course, we saw against Florida State, and it continues to be an issue. You have, for whatever reason, you have lapses in your protection, and it's a issue that has. After the Florida State game, we said, okay, that's not good. Well, we'll keep an eye on that, but hopefully, they're gonna, especially when you had it blocked multiple times,
right?
In that game, okay, that's not good. They need to fix that. That should never happen. But they'll probably emphasize that, and it shouldn't have. We shouldn't have to worry about it again. And then it rears its ugly head when you're already having a bad performance in the other two phases of the game. So, just burn the tape. Ultimately that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, absolutely. Burn the tape, man. It was a poor performance. As good as the offensive line has been so far this season, I was really disappointed with them in short yardage situations. And I know some of that was Louisville doing timely run blitzes and stuff like that, and doing some stuff up front to confuse the offensive line. But I mean, in short yardage situations in that game, time and time and time again, we got blown off the ball. They reestablished the line of scrimmage, and we got virtually 0 yards anytime we were in short yardage situation, which is embarrassing. It should not have happened. It's unacceptable. I don't think the offensive line played particularly well in the game. I think their pass rush was, one of their more shoddy performances so far this season. You mentioned the receivers. It really truly is just a kind of a game you got to turn the page on. Everything went wrong. The special teams, unfortunately, I don't think it's getting fixed. I mean, why should we think they're going to fix whatever that problem is that teams are exploiting with our field goal team? Clearly, they're seeing something that they're able to exploit. Florida State was the first to do it, and now Louisville has followed suit with it. So clearly, it's something. I don't know if it's how they align. I don't know if it's how their blocking scheme, how it's being coached, whatever the case may be. It hasn't been cleaned up. It was a glaring issue in that Florida State game, a glaring issue in this game, and I got no reason to think they're going to clean it up going forward. So I got little to no hope that our special team's going to improve throughout the season. We've already talked about our special teams, so I don't want to keep harping on that. But yeah. I got no.
Well, I'd also just real quick. I'd also wonder how much Nolan Hooser and his kicking. I haven't gotten any sort of clarification, or I don't know if he's kicking the ball too low. I mean, I saw some that was thrown out there. That could definitely play a part, but I don't know. Guys are. But either way, when you have a guy completely fall over.
Yeah. when you got a guy looking up at the sky when he's supposed to be in field goal protection, probably not good.
Yeah, that's a lapse regardless. So.
And you'd be like, oh, well, Peter Woods was out, and he's normally in on that team. What is Peter Woods the only dude that can play on Clemson? I mean,
does he do everything? Like when we don't have him,
without Peter Woods. Like suddenly we turn into a bottom feeder ACC team as soon as Peter.
He's our fullback. He's a blocker on special teams. Obviously, he plays defensive end. He plays defensive tackle.
Yeah, I mean, look, hey, Peter Woods is a great player, and
just throw him out there so he can run routes.
Yeah,
I mean, might as well. He's
the next Clemson fan, but dang, we got to stop acting like we can't win a game without Peter Woods. Like, he certainly makes our team so much better. But like, hey, I just seen that excuse out there, and I'm like, no, stop it. He's an elite player, but you got to have depth pieces. So. I don't know. Special teams is a nightmare for Clemson at this point, and I don't see it getting any better throughout the season. Let's hope nothing comes down to a field goal kick, because boy,
not anything longer than 30 yards.
You just know it's going to get blocked at this point. It's not even the field goal kicker. It's just that it's never going to get a chance to make it.